evening, everyone. I know there were a couple of other people that had said they were going to attend tonight, but they're not here yet, so I think we're going to get underway. Welcome. And I would like to introduce Glenn Hill, who's presented at the library several times now. As you can see up on the screen, he's the former Director of Information Security at Northeastern University. And he is going to probably scare us so much about internet security that we're going to go home and unplug everything. Just kidding. So, Glenn?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. And welcome to Internet Technology, Privacy, and Security for the fall of 2012. This presentation has been given at the library a few times before, thanks to Robin and your generosity. And special thanks to John Spitting for technical assistance tonight. If we may have the next slide. We ask ourselves, why do we really care about Internet technology, privacy, and security? And there's a few very relevant reasons why we do. Technology is a part of our life. It's unavoidable. All of us have technology. We have desktops, laptops, smartphones, and tablets. And we rely on these devices for contacts and communications, calendars and transactions, and literally the conduct of daily life. I know for myself, I could not do without my internet connection. I just couldn't. However, in all technology and in everything, nothing's perfect. Pitfalls are there, and especially in technology, they're there. Physical loss, theft of devices, device malfunctions, security weaknesses, malicious attacks, loss of privacy, and identity theft, which is one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Now you may ask yourselves, next slide, what can we do about all this? Well, there's a bunch of things we can do. We can develop security awareness. We can understand privacy and information sharing implications when we're asked for information. We can practice safe computing and help others do the same. One helps the other. We can be alert to new threats. And the fact is that computer security expertise is not necessary. You don't have to be a geek to get this stuff right. It's really easy. And it really is true that anyone can be their own computer security officer. But we ask ourselves, how? Well, here's how you do it. First, by developing security, familiarity, and awareness. Think security. Think consciously all the time security. Think of yourself these thoughts. My device is valuable to someone. Someone wants my device. My data that's on that device is valuable too. Someone wants my device or its data, but my privacy is valuable to me. But my privacy is no concern to a bad actor, is it? No concern at all. I need to protect my interests, and I will practice thoughtful awareness. But overall, I will take deliberate preventive actions to protect my interests. And some of those deliberate preventive actions are keeping physical control of all your devices. Keep them with you. Don't lose them. The most often lost device at colleges and universities are iPhones. Keep physical control of your devices. Never let untrusted others use a device of yours. Don't let a friend who you just met use any of your devices. Use antivirus and malware tools where it's reasonable. Keep all your software updated. Now, some may argue with me that some of one particular computer company, whose name I won't mention, has offered some pretty poor updates lately that have caused some problems. You don't always have to accept the updates, but it's generally a pretty good idea to stay updated. Choose what data to keep where. Where might you keep your medical data? Are you going to keep that on your computer? Maybe, maybe not. Where are you going to keep your contacts in your calendar? Probably on your computer, maybe on paper. What about your photos and your music? Media is all over the place these days, and it's on every device. Also, choose what data to share and not to share. And remember that you and you alone are the controller of your data. You own your data. Okay? You own your information. Discretion is imperative. You have to be very conscious about to whom you give information and what information you give. You have to have awareness of consequences,
and share data only where it is required. Here are some more deliberate preventive actions you can take. If you don't have a shredder at home, get one. I don't need a show of hands, but those of you that don't have shredders, get one and use it. Always retrieve your paper mail promptly. How many people know what time the mailman comes every day? I know. Well, get your paper mail as soon as he comes, because there's somebody out there looking for your paper mail. Shred all non-vital records, any unsolicited credit card applications, anything with identifying information on it. And I have in parentheses there the 2% rule. Generally, in most households and most organizations, about 2% of your information has identifying data on it that could be of use to a bad actor. This one's very important. Sanitize your Facebook and any other social media on which you have an appearance. Remove date of birth and all non-essential information. And we all know what happens to people who get tangled up in Facebook with information that they'd rather not have there. Generally, it might not apply to people of our group, but to young people certainly. And never respond to any inquiry unless you initiate it. This is the most important bullet on the page. Always be comfortable saying, no, I cannot give you the information you are asking for. Remember, don't give unless you've initiated the transaction. Now, the big question, what is identity theft? Identity theft is the acquisition and use of personal identifying information of another person for any unlawful purpose, for instance, an attempt to get credit, goods or services, medical data, in the name of that person without their consent. That's pretty easy, right? Not complicated at all. It's also the use of identifying information to commit fraud, such as taking over accounts, purchasing cars, applying for loans, renting apartments, getting utilities. There's lots of things identity thieves can do. A lot of us ask ourselves, how can it affect me? You know, why do I need to be concerned about this? Well, the average fraudulent charge in ID theft is around $4,000, and about 16% of victims wind up paying something out of their pocket. And 1 year after, 28% of victims could not recover their good name, and that data is courtesy of Nationwide Mutual Insurance. There could be lost opportunities, collection agency phone calls, inability to get credit, and even unauthorized property transfer. Some cofactors in the ID theft problem are personal information is very widely held. It's everywhere. Sometimes there's a general lack of awareness, casual treatment of sensitive information, people readily volunteer information without even thinking about it, variance in protective measures that are taken by organizations. At Northeastern, you might imagine we were very tight with security. A lot of data was in play. Opportunities for dishonesty, both individuals and organized crime. And there's always the cost of consequence versus the cost of protection argument. You're not going to spend $1 million to protect something that's worth $10. But if you have something worth $100,000, you might spend $50 to protect it. Also, legislative and industry interests very much impact ID theft legislation. Now, how do you become a victim of ID theft? Well, your information can be stolen by businesses, stolen through businesses and other institutions, by people stealing while they're on the job, bribing of an employee, unauthorized access, or even conning information out of employees, going up to an employee and pretending to be someone that you're not. How to become a victim? Personal information stolen from you, theft of your credit or debit card numbers by capturing that information during a transaction. Has anybody ever heard of the restaurants, and I won't name them, where the wait staff goes in back and swipes the card again? That has happened many times, especially on the East Coast. Theft of your wallet or purse. Completing a change of address form to divert your postal mail to another location. Or theft of personal information found around the house. Does anybody ever have like service people into their house, like plumbers or electricians or things like that? You never know what they might find. So secure your house before you have people in it. Personal information can be stolen from you by the theft of your mail, including your bank and credit card statements, credit card offers, new checks, tax information. I once found in a dumpster, which will remain unnamed, checks worth $30,000, which I could have taken right to the bank and cashed. or rummaging through business or residential trash, also known as dumpster diving. Dumpster diving. You can also become a victim by someone acquiring credit reports by abusing employers' authorized access, posing as a landlord, employer, or somebody who has a legal right to your credit report. So how do you reduce your risk? Safeguard your personal information. Get your paper mail fast, promptly. Don't leave traces lying around. Don't leave traces of data. Shred, shred, shred is the word. Be sharply aware of the information that you give and whom you give it to. And close to the end of the presentation, I'll tell you a story about the newest form of identity theft. Resist excess sharing. Don't feel as if you have to give personal information unless you're in a situation that absolutely requires it. Okay? Remember, you own your data. Verify, validate, and reconcile everything. All your statements, all your transactions, all your bills. Check everything. Don't let a single penny go unaccounted for. Check your credit report at least once a year. Close any unused or unnecessary accounts that you may have had. Most of us have like a bazillion old credit card accounts that are still open. You want to close the ones you don't use. And report any exceptions immediately to the credit issuer. Excuse me. Some possible signs of ID theft: unexpected account charges, unexpected bills that arrive at your doorstep, unexpected new accounts, missing paper mail that you're expecting to get that you don't receive, or bills you don't receive. Unexpected calls demanding payment for purchases that you did not make, or if you get turned down for credit when you shouldn't be. Your response: the first and foremost thing, if it happens to you, avoid panic. Remember I said I wouldn't scare you tonight? So the first thing to do is don't be scared. Act promptly and deliberately. Gather all your account records, contact the 3 credit bureaus, and I'll give you the information for that near the end of the presentation. Contact law enforcement, contact your creditors, banks, financial service providers, and utilities. Contact your insurance company. Many homeowners insurance policies these days offer protection for identity theft up to certain dollar amounts. Next slide. So, if your identity is stolen, step 1, protect your finances. Contact the fraud departments of the major credit bureaus. Get a copy of your credit report and ask that your file be flagged with a fraud alert tag and your statement. And this will limit a thief's ability to open new accounts. And generally, new creditors, when you've done this, they will call you to verify that you wish to open a new account. And this freeze, if you will remain in place for 7 years. Do bring yourself up to date with some changes in the Massachusetts law, which happened several years ago with respect to data breaches. How many have received a letter of a data breach? Everybody? Yeah, I think a lot of us have. File a police report, step 2. You need a police report to dispute any unauthorized charges and for insurance claims. And fill out an online ID theft complaint with the FTC. There's an 877 number you can call. And this presentation, I believe, can be made available. I'll have to double check. 1-877 ID theft is the number. Step 3, closed all compromised accounts. All of them: banks, credit card companies, lenders, phone companies, utilities, even internet service providers. Dispute any unauthorized charges. What resources are available? Well, here they are. I'm sorry that I don't have paper to hand out. I didn't want to kill any trees tonight. But these are some of the websites that you can go to get additional information about identity theft. And here, as I promised, here are the telephone numbers to the 3 main credit bureaus. I'll leave this slide up for a second if anybody wants to copy them down. They're also available if you just Google identity theft. You can get the numbers for these credit reporting agencies. And just a few numbers so that we can kind of put this in perspective. Oh, sorry.
We can post these slides online.
Oh, great.
Also.
Thank you. Just a few numbers to kind of put this in perspective. In 2010, 7% of all American households were affected by ID theft. That's a lot. The average dollar loss was about $13,000. It can happen to you, and the consequences can really be severe. Next slide. You ask yourself now, is there anything else I can do to stay safer? And yes, there is. Your intuition is your friend. Remember that. Never forget it, and when it speaks, listen closely. I'm now going to share with you the 6 warning signs of danger in any encounter or transaction. Credit for this part of the presentation goes to Gavin DeBecker, who is the author of The Gift of Fear. The 6 warning signs of danger starts with forced teaming, where someone seeks to confer participation on you. For instance, if someone says to you, I know we just met, but I really feel I know you and you can trust me, that's a warning sign. Or if someone were to say to you, boy, oh boy, look what we did. The word we, look what we did. Those are forced teaming, examples of forced teaming. Next slide. I think I may have duplicated a slide, I apologize. The next warning sign is typecasting, where someone states a prejudicial assumption, hoping you'll relax your guard. For instance, someone were to approach you and say, well, you're probably too snobbish to talk to someone like me. That's a warning sign. That's a warning sign. Loan sharking. Predators offer help, but always calculate and state the debt. For instance, if someone were to approach you and say, I'll help you, but remember, you need to do this one thing for me, that's loan sharking. Another danger sign. Another sign, unsolicited promises, where someone makes an inappropriate agreement with you or seeks to do so, or someone who makes efforts to control you. For instance, just answer this question and I'll leave you alone. That is an unsolicited promise, and it's extremely dangerous if you hear this. Discounting your use of the word no. Anytime you say no, what do you mean when you say no? No, and no is no. But if someone discounts it and continues to pressure you after you've said no, what do? Get away as fast as you can. And that is this year's abbreviated presentation about identity theft and internet privacy and internet technology. I purposely wanted to make this short because we know we have a debate tonight. And this stuff, I don't know, does anybody's eyes glaze over sometimes when you hear this stuff over and over again? I know mine do, and I've been in the business 37 years. So it can be a little heavy. So what I do is I seek to present just the brief information. And now I would like to entertain questions and answers from anyone, question, answer, comment. The one thing I did want to mention to you, the latest form of identity theft is medical information identity theft. It was in the news 2 days ago. It consists of use of your name and your medical insurance card or number or other identifying information to obtain medical services, which could result in your getting a bill that you did not expect to get. And if that ever happens, follow the steps for identity theft, because it could be that your identity was stolen, your medical identity. That's the latest form, and there will be more forms. Yes?
When you go to pull a credit report, and you see there are some accounts on there that you haven't used for years, and you want to have them closed, so you take those measures to do that. What's the next step in ensuring that those closed accounts are now reflected on your credit report?
Right. That's a great question. Check your credit report again several months after making the request, and it will show account closed. That's how it will read.
My understanding is that if your credit report is requested more than once within a certain period of time, that it affects your credit rating.
Yes, it can affect your credit rating, yes. Yes, it's called an inquiry. For instance, if you go for a mortgage and then you 5 minutes later go to open a credit account, those both count as inquiries because your credit report will be looked at by an organization who's ever going to grant you credit. They will look at it, and it can affect your credit score, and that's an anomaly of the credit reporting agencies who formulate the scores.
So does that happen if you, as the owner, put in an inquiry a few months later as a follow-up?
No, if you are the name on the credit card, if you check your own credit report, it does not count as an inquiry. No, because that credit report, actually, all the data belongs to you.
Okay.
Thank you, that was a great question. Yes?
I just refinanced today for like the 7th time in a year, and there's a name, you know, how they, you have different names on things and they have you sign all the different names that might be on any credit cards or whatever you have. There's a name on my husband's that isn't our name. And both the lawyer and the mortgage broker said, oh, don't worry about it, it happens all the time. But it's been there every time we refinance. It's not even close. Our last name is Zarnowski, and it's like Kerkorian or something like that. So, and so finally, when I questioned the lawyer again, he said, no, you probably need to contact the credit bureaus.
I would definitely contact the credit bureaus, and that is like a wrong last name can result in havoc. I would contact the credit reporting bureaus and make sure that your information is, correct. Your name and address is correct with the agencies, with every agency. There's 3 of them, and you have to call all 3, unfortunately. That's a great question.
Know how that happened?
I wouldn't be able to help you with that. Sometimes in real estate transactions, things are recorded in odd ways, and I don't have any expertise in that area. I apologize. But that's a great question, and I would pursue that.
I was doing some consulting for my former employer last spring, and happened to be there on a day when required security training was going on. The company does security training, mandatory once a year.
Great.
And so I sat in on it, and the security officer gave what to me was a very surprising statistic, saying that with the spyware and malware that the company has on its servers and so on, that they can keep track of how many illegal entries, I guess, or illegal attempts are made on the system daily.
Yes.
And so one of the slides that the fellow put up was something like, I don't know, 12 or 15,000 hits a day.
Oh, that's low. That's a very low number. Do you know, at Northeastern, we used to get hit 8,000 times per second. And we deflected 8,000 attack attempts per second for years and years and years. And the system that does that is called an intrusion prevention system.
So does that sort of thing on a smaller basis happen to us as individuals on our own systems?
The attempts actually do occur. The break-in attempts occur. And they are rarely successful, however, because most of us have our computers at home behind perhaps a Comcast or a Verizon router or some other internet service provider's router that actually assigns a special address to our computer, so our computer cannot be seen from the internet unless we first reach out and ask for data. So you'll probably be in good shape.
What are they looking for? 8,000 times a second?
Oh, and most of the attacks, lovely, France. Most of the attacks came from France.
Really?
Nothing against France. But most of the attacks did come from France and Europe, Asia. They come from all over the world.
But what are they trying to get?
They're trying to get their hands on any information they can. Anything.
Students or teachers or whatever.
Names, addresses, social security numbers, credit card numbers, debit card numbers, you name it, there's somebody out there looking for it. Because all this data is worth something. There's a huge market for data, stolen data on the internet. Your name is worth about $1. Your name is actually worth $1. That was a couple of years ago. It's probably worth a little more now. Another great question, Jean?
Oh, Glenn, how can you protect your Social Security number? So many times, just a form in the doctor's office will say Social Security number.
Yes.
Or, in AT&T, the Social Security number is like the password so that you can access your account.
Yep.
Is there any way you can refuse to use it, or?
In many situations, especially in medical situations, you cannot refuse your Social Security number. My trick that I learned from a very, very good friend of mine was to omit the number and see if they call you on it. Okay? And if they don't call you on it, you're good to go.
Yeah.
And this especially applies to doctor's offices because could be a lot of people around. Somebody could be shoulder surfing you to see what you're writing. So yes, try to just skip it and see if they call you on it.
I found that if I say I don't want to give it, they usually say, oh, that's okay, just leave it. The only times when I've had problems is when I've gone to apply for a credit card.
Yes.
And, and I'll say I don't want to give my Social Security number, and they say, well, then don't apply, because that's
Yes,
the only way,
right.
that's the only way we would.
Right, any credit transaction, lending transaction, banking, without a Social Security number, it's U.S. law, Patriot Act requires it.
Oh, interesting.
And the Patriot Act is not going away anytime soon, as far as I know. That's a great question, Jean, yes.
When you talk about shredding, shred, even your name and address, like on the outside of an envelope?
I wouldn't say it's imperative to shred it, but why have it out there?
Okay.
Why have your name and address out there for somebody to look at? I'll admit freely that I don't shred my name and address all the time, but I probably should. So I'll castigate myself on live television.
I found that since I got my shredder about 2 years ago, it really has made me think about what information I was throwing away and what I shred. And now, even with emails, if I print something off as a reminder to do something, and then once I've done it, I used to just throw it away. Now I realize I've got other people's email addresses on there.
Sure.
So for business with the library or any other stuff, throwing it away, it not only exposes yourself, but all those other email addresses that are out there.
Right, and you'd be amazed how fiercely protective people are of their email addresses. They really are protective of them because we don't like spam. We don't want our inboxes full of spam every morning. Mine is. I've done the best I can, but I'm still full of spam every day, and I just clear it out. But that's a really good observation.
Can you talk a little bit about logins and passwords?
Thank you for asking. Logins and passwords. My advice on logins and passwords, this gets kind of into tough territory because you want something that you can remember, right, and that you don't forget. Yet, it has to be complex, right? Because there are password guessers out there, people who run machines that guess nothing but user IDs and passwords all day and all night long. These are little 14-year-old kids with nothing better to do. So, my advice is to make those factors memorable to you, but perhaps spell them wrong, spell them in a unique way. For instance, and please do not use this, if you're going to use zebra as your password, spell it with a couple of extra Z's or a couple of extra A's, or maybe put a $ in the middle of it. Choose logins and passwords that, most logins are your email address these days, I think. Most places accept that. However, for your password, you want it very, very hard to guess. And a great way to make it hard to guess is to make it something familiar to you, but spell it wrong. And for heaven's sakes, don't write it down and stick it on the bottom of your keyboard.
Why not?
That's another really great question, because more and more these days we're required to create accounts for any electronic service we want, and to me that's quite frustrating to have to try to remember them all. It's tough.
Well, so many you might have one password with one account, and then the next one requires numbers, or it's too long or too short. So you end up with 35 different passwords.
Well, this is another thing, and Robin, I'm glad you mentioned this. Excuse me. This is another thing that organizations are doing now, is that they are keeping a history of the passwords you have used. And so if you've used a password in the past, they will probably not allow you to use it again. Some of them count the number of characters. Some of them look at the construct of your password. Personally, it's growing quite frustrating to me. But this is the electronic age.
I just had to change a password because I forgot the first one, and then I forgot it a second time, and I ended up inadvertently using the first one, and it said, nope, you can't do that. You've used it within this past year.
Oh, thank heavens I'm not alone. Oh, I feel better now.
Should you change your password every so many months or whatever? Sometimes you hear you should change it every 3 months. How could that be possible?
How often do folks change their toothbrushes? This is a really old one. This goes back to the 70s in security. Every 90 days, you probably want a new toothbrush. Maybe even more frequently than that. But every 90 days, you should probably change. Now, that can be a real burden. If you have a lot of electronic access in a lot of places, that is a tremendous burden. So you may want to extend the period. Obviously, on accounts that are more sensitive, such as your banking accounts, okay, you may want to impose more stringent, more frequent changes of your password. Whereas, your login with overstock.com or something like that, and I'm not selling Overstock, they didn't pay me to say that, you might change that less frequently. Another great question.
Are you familiar with LastPass Vault? John uses it and just had me doing it here at the library. It's an encrypted service, software service that remembers your logins and your passwords.
Yep.
And so every time I go to, say, Amazon, I can direct it to automatically log in for me.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
And you set up a master password with it. And if you ever forget that password, you can't get to all of your information.
Right, you're out at that point.
Out. Is that secure? Is that something I can trust?
Is it a hardware device that you hold in your hand?
No.
Okay. It's online?
It's online.
Oh, too bad. Anything that's online is fair game. Yes, sir.
What's your opinion of the commercially available identity theft protection services?
Oh, there's one that you see on television all the time, and I'm not, again, they didn't pay me to say this. Some of you may have heard about LifeLock, okay? Well, that's where the guy who owns it wrote his social security number on the side of all his trucks. Well, guess what happened to him? His identity was stolen successfully. So I would leave that as the example. His identity was stolen. And even, I can give you an example, there's a very famous mail order prescription organization that's out there, and I'm not going to mention its name, whose security practices are, let's say, not what they should be. They're not quite as strong as they should be. All you need is to intercept an email and open it. There's no encryption, there's no login, there's no password, just open the email. And you can read patient's diagnosis, the medicine, whatever it is, whatever information is in there, you can easily just pop the email open. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. So, did that answer the question about the commercial service?
It was rather vague.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any service that offers to lock your identity, so to speak, is really going to lock your identity. Now, they have online systems too, and every online system is vulnerable. The U.S. government has penetrated thousands of times a day their computer systems. So there's really no electronic system that is impenetrable. The only computer that's a safe computer and a protected computer is one that's turned off and in a locked closet. So the ID theft protection bureaus, so to speak, if that kind of works for you, not a lot of confidence in them. They're doing things online, they're doing things electronically, and they may, the other thing that happens with those services is they make it extremely difficult for you to conduct a legitimate transaction. If you want to get a mortgage, if you want to get a credit card, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to do it, to unlock, so to speak, your life, if you will. Does that clarify?
Yes,
Thank you. Yes?
So what do you do if your identity has been stolen? I mean, you had the agencies that you can contact.
Yes.
Should you go out and get a lawyer? I mean, you can call all your credit card, companies in your bank and so on. But how do you clear your good name?
That's a huge question. Unfortunately, I can't give any legal advice because I'm not a lawyer. However, the value of a lawyer in a situation like that may not be as great as the value in getting a hold of police and filing a police report, as was suggested in the slide, and then contacting the credit bureaus and placing a freeze on your credit report. Very, very important things to do, and your insurance company, because many insurance companies provide coverage to certain dollar amounts for victims of identity theft. Those are the really important things. Did I answer your question respectfully? Thank you. Thank you. That was a great question, by the way. A lot of people wonder about that.
Well, I know when I was working, the company I worked for offered a service that was free of charge to the employees for an agency that helped you if your identity had been compromised in some way.
Yes.
It was a throw-in benefit along with personal accident insurance and all these other things. And I know a couple of people who made use of it and found it to be a terrific thing. I mean, they basically did all the legwork for you in contacting people and following up with the credit bureaus and the credit card companies and so on, so that you didn't have to take time out of your workday to do it. And
Yes.
then, they'd sort of do all the grunt work for you and report back to you.
Yep. That is a benefit that is offered by a lot of organizations these days. From a practical sense, it can save you a lot of legwork. A lot of legwork.
Are those services available for individuals to purchase?
To tell you the truth, I don't know. I do not know the answer to that question. You may be able to find out by exploring the website of the 3 credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and there's one other one, Equifax, right? Another great question. These are really great questions this evening. Yes, sir?
If you have a wireless router in your home, are you vulnerable in any way if someone learns of your router numbers? Can they access anything next door?
Absolutely. If you don't have your wireless router at home password protected so that a password is required to connect to the router, anybody who's driving by or your next door neighbor or anyone else can glom right onto your wireless network. And while you may not even notice it, and while they may not do anything wrong, they could download music, they could download movies, they could commit any act at all. And if it were a wrongful act, and investigation revealed that that wrongful act came from your router, guess who they're going to blame? They're going to come looking for you. Because your router has a unique address that's registered with whoever your internet service provider is. And they'll find you. So everybody who's got wireless LANs, put a password on it tomorrow. I know it's inconvenient, I know it's another password, but it's really, really important. Oh, just refer to the documentation that came with the device. It'll tell you how to set up a protected network. They'll tell you how to put a password on. For instance, if it's Verizon, just call Verizon. They'll tell you how to do it.
I think when Verizon they insisted, they wouldn't let you have an open wireless. They insisted on having a key. Would they call it a key instead of a password? I think. But,
Yeah, it's a key.
Yeah.
Some organizations are much better than others on insisting on that type of thing, and Verizon is really good. And as I recall back in some of my dealings with Verizon, they did insist. They would not open up the radio. So what I did is I took the antenna off the router and put my own wireless router in it. So I didn't have to worry about that. Really, really great questions. Robin, I think this is some of the best questions we've ever had. So much has happened in the last few years in terms of technology and changes and things like that, new questions bubble up every time. That question about the wireless was also an excellent question. Thank you for asking.
Did you change that your wireless router?
You can change that, and but it would be very difficult for someone to get the password to your wireless router. They would have to sit outside your house and gather the electronic signals emitted by your router for about 40 years in order to break the key. So that's probably not going to happen. So you can feel good about that, once you set that password, that you should be in good shape. No assurances, however.
Have a lot of the old scams, have they gone away, or is it that you just don't see them anymore? I mean,
Nope.
are the Nigerians still collecting money?
Sure they are.
Yeah.
Every scam that we've seen is still out there. Our telephone rings almost every night with somebody wanting something. And, it could be donations for money that, how do I know who the person is on the other end of the line? I have no way of knowing. Every scam that has been out there under the sun is still there, so you have to be wary. Mail, and it could be by electronic mail, paper mail, telephone, text message. They come in all flavors. So you have to be really aware, and that was the kind of the gist of tonight's presentation, is to boost awareness, because with awareness comes understanding, and questions like that I think help create understanding, and that's really good.
One more thing.
No, please ask as many questions as you like. We are.
Teaching the class next year.
We're,
Be teaching the class next year.
I was listening to a radio show the other day, and they were talking about direct advertising. And apparently the dish networks, satellite TV, have made available to various advertisers personal information about their subscribers, so that now if say in our families, we both have satellite or direct TV, they could look at our profile and say, oh, well, in their 60s, watch a lot of sports and news. So we'll get bombarded with ads for, Viagra and, Metamucil and, and Forbes. And,
Could you send the Metamucil one to me, please? Thank you.
And other households that are younger and have families, or however they get this demographic data, will be hit with ads for Disney World and Toys R Us and so on. And they said that this is the first time that advertising is being directed to a specific household based on demographics, income, work history, and so on. And I just thought that was amazing, because I'm saying to myself, how does my cable company know how old I am, or how many people live in my household, or
There was something I think it was in the business pages at some point this week, about a new app on your phone you can use, they put it that way, instead of the grocery store. As you're going through the store with your phone's GPS, It will like know when you stop in front of something to look. It will print out a coupon for you if you scan the barcode.
Yep.
It's just amazing that it's like so minute the eye that's watching.
The eye is definitely watching, and the problem is getting worse. It's getting worse. One of the ways that you can be aware of how your data might be used is to, and I know this is a horrible thing to ask, but you must read the privacy policies. Verizon will send you a privacy policy on request. They're required to send it to you every year. Every business with which you do business, actually in Massachusetts, is required to send you a privacy policy copy every year if they collect any of your personal information, which explains what data do they use and how do they use it, with whom do they share it, how it is protected. If you don't get a privacy policy and you're doing business with someone where you're giving them personal information, ask them for it. And if they won't give you, if they don't have a privacy policy, stop doing business with them.
The problem is that you can read the privacy policy and say, well, I don't want you using my personal information, and then they say, tough luck, go find someone else.
Some of them will say tough luck because businesses these days tend to be, they can be controlling, as we know. You know how little wiggle room we have these days in certain transactions. But there are times when you can opt out. Sometimes it takes a while, but eventually it does take hold. I've been trying to opt out of one thing that really annoys me a lot for many years and still have not been successful. I keep trying. That's another really good topic, and it will get worse. Has anybody ever heard of an RFID tag? RFID?
Yes, we have them here.
Yes,
But we don't put any information on them except the barcode number of the book.
Yep. RFID tags now are starting to be put on food products, clothing, all types of merchandise. And the RFID tag can identify itself to your cell phone or tablet or whatever electronic device that may be RFID capable that you're carrying with you. And data can be exchanged between them and then relayed to others. It's a little bit scary.
Yeah, when RFID first was coming out in libraries, people were very concerned because the tag, we could load it up with the author and the title of the book and all sorts of information. And they were so afraid that Big Brother would come down the street and read the RFID tags in your house and know what you're reading. So we opted only to put the barcode number on the tag, and without our library software here in this building, that number is useless. You don't. There's nothing to match it
Right,
to.
right. And that was a very good decision, and that was a decision that advocated for the privacy interests of your patrons.
Yeah, libraries have always been out in the forefront in the privacy issue.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I have Verizon. I've had it for a long time. And I started receiving some emails with my first name, period, my last name. And I couldn't figure out why I was getting that. I come to find out an alias was put on there. Maybe when I first started. How did they get that from Verizon? Or somebody got it.
That email might not be from Verizon.
Well, it was from all different places.
All different places.
How did they get it though?
Email is probably one of...
Excuse me, I never used that. Never used that once.
Never used it once.
Not even once.
Emails can be created completely, they can be forged easily. I could easily create an email in anybody's name in this room in minutes if I had the names and send them out, and it would look just like they came from you. Email is probably one of the least secure forms of communication there is because it was never designed for security. It was designed for ease of use. And I got an email the other day that looked very much like a identity fraud warning from Citibank. But I looked closely at the email and there were misspellings in the email. Citibank wouldn't make that mistake, so I knew that was a fraudulent email.
How dangerous is that to get emails like that?
Sorry?
I get emails like that too.
Mhm. Sure.
I opened one of them once, and then I realized that it was misspelled. It wasn't from the person that it said it was. But
Happens a lot.
is that egregious enough that I should change my email address? Or?
No, just delete the message.
Okay.
Oh, just opening the message doesn't do any harm?
Well, on certain versions of the Windows operating system in years past, just opening a message in some circumstances was enough to cause damage to your computer. These days, my understanding is it's a little better. A little better. And nothing against Microsoft. Did I answer your question, sir?
I'm still, why, in other words, they sent it to this, my first name period, my last name, but how did they get that? It came right to me. It's different than the one I always used. I never used it.
Oh, that's probably somebody who has that email was relayed to you probably through another source somewhere. There are people who set up they guess email addresses, and they'll just fire stuff out. I know several students who were once in that business, and they just fire emails out, and you just guess the names, and you'll get some of them right.
My first name, and they just put a period in there.
Yep, it's easy, very easy.
How many emails can be related to something like that?
I'm sorry.
I have somebody on white pages, like myself even.
Yep.
They might know who my mother is, who my sisters are, things like that. That's another thing that's sort of fascinating.
Sure, that's a lot of that is actually there's two parts. There's a two-part answer to that question. Your name and your age, and your place of residence, your city of residence, are actually public record, and they are available to anyone. And what companies do, the second answer, the answer part two, is that there are other companies that will aggregate that data. They'll aggregate the public record data and try to find matches between it and then put it all together. And so that forms exactly what you're speaking of, kind of the, gee, how did they get to know my relations, you know? It's a guess on their part, but usually the guesses are pretty good, unfortunately.
There's the one, is it Spadio? The website that also gives your income.
Oh my God.
Your real estate taxes, and a whole bunch of personal information about you and people that live in your household. I think it's Spadio. Is that ringing a bell?
It does not ring a bell with me, but there are services for which you can pay that will reveal tremendous amounts of information, personal information.
This is a limit that you pay for, and
I'm not familiar with that.
And you can ask them. There is a section on it now where you can ask to have your information blocked. But I think it's SPOTEO. I'm not positive of that, but I think that's what it is. But I was astounded. Someone had alerted me to it, and I went in. And sometimes they even have your picture. You know, I don't know if they get it from Facebook or LinkedIn or where they get your picture from. But there we were with our estimated income, taxes that you've paid.
Your taxes are public record.
Yep. You know, your address, which I know is public record, and you know, just a lot of information that you look at and you feel naked. I mean, you're totally exposed.
We are totally exposed. There are some communities that have chosen. There's a tax software out there that the assessors, boards of assessors use, and some of them choose to open it up. Others choose to lock it down so that others cannot see it. They require a login and a password, but it depends on the city or town. I've seen it both ways. But there is no limit to the amount of information you can get if you're willing to pay for it. You can get court judgments, liens, arrest records. You can pretty much get a complete background report on anybody you want if you're willing to pay the amount of money that's asked. And there was a company in Georgia that was a subject of a federal investigation for doing just that. Another great observation.
So was this company in Georgia doing anything illegal?
Yes, they were. They were involved in failure to vet the information that was given to them, and then they were reselling information that was not verified and collecting money for it, which is fraud. Excellent, more excellent questions. Really great questions. We may have a small turnout, yes?
Yes, can I give you a question about the RF again?
RFID tag?
How do they attach my jersey to me and information together?
Oh, it's really, really easy. So you go pick your jersey off the rack at, I won't name the store, and you pay for it with your credit card, and a little reader at the cashier's desk will tie your credit card to the RFID information that came from the garment, so they'll know what you bought, right, when you bought it. They will know your buying preferences from that. They will not be able to get any of your personal information from that RFID tag, but as you know, passports now contain an RFID tag, US passports. And that tag, although it is reported to be encrypted, if one possessed the proper decryption key, one could read the passport data. And that is an exposure. And you may have noticed, you may have heard on TV, people are selling like aluminum wallets to put your credit cards and your passports in so people can't read the RFID tags. And those are somewhat effective, but not totally. But if you haven't heard about them yet, you will.
How is that tag on my shirt? Is it like a UPS type of thing, or?
Oh, an RFID tag is actually about half the size of your little fingernail.
So I can't find it.
You probably won't.
I can't remove it.
Nope. You know how they put those little plastic tickets, you know, on clothing, and you can never get the full piece of plastic out? That's how they get the RFID tags in there, so that they can't be removed. You'll never know it's there.
Are there any credit cards that are safer than others, and are they rated? Is there a place you can go to this that tells you how secure your various credit card companies are?
I am not aware of any such site. There is a site you could go to get listings of terms, interest rates, credit scores required, and things like that, to see if you are eligible for certain types of credit cards. But there is not a site that I'm aware of that talks about the relative security of one card as a card company or issuer as opposed to another. They're all pretty much the same in their practices, and even the biggest names in the world have had data breaches. So be they big, be they small, there is not a site that I'm aware of.
Would you say a major bank would be more secure than a department store?
Absolutely not. If Citibank has had a few data breaches, as have most of the major banks, big banks, small banks, they've had breaches. So we're kind of out of luck when it comes to trying to determine what card issuer we might go to, or what bank we might deal with, or other organization might deal with, to find out how safe, quote, they are, or unsafe.
Well, and it's even more than the credit card issuer, because every time we purchase something online, our credit card number is out there, right? And all these stores, every place you use it, stores that information online, so.
Well, that's interesting, Robin. They used to be able to do that, but a law was passed that they now cannot do that. It's a federal law that your full credit card number is not permitted to be stored. They can only store the last 4 digits and the expiration date, which is really, really good. That was a major advance for us as consumers. Okay. So any merchant you go to, the bank can store the full number, but the merchant cannot.
Is there any advantage to using PayPal for, having paying with one thing? When you have the option of either putting your credit card in or paying with PayPal, very often I'll just pay with PayPal because then I have to log into my PayPal account, but that's one place.
PayPal is very convenient and it's very popular. A lot of people use it. I can't speak to its safety or security, but it is very popular. There was a couple of comments that popped at the same time. Did I miss anybody? Yeah. No? I got everybody?
Store cards, like, that information, is that compromising?
Store cards?
Like, straw cards, things like that.
Oh, those cards. You know what you do with those? If you, let's say you have gotten one of those store cards, store discount cards, and that you gave your personal information in exchange for the privilege of carrying that card, get rid of the card and demand that they give you a card without any identifying information. They're required by law to do so. Now that's if you're very concerned about your personal information. Just stop, tear up, cut the card out, go back to the merchant, whatever merchant it is, and say, I would like a new card, please, and I'm not going to give you any identifying information. They'll throw their hands up and they'll protest, but the law is on your side.
There was an article in the Sunday Globe magazine about supermarkets and how they operate, and one of the things they talked about was those cards. And when they are identified with you personally, they're used to track your shopping habits.
Absolutely.
And then will direct target coupons. So if you buy, Hungry Man dinners every week, you'll get coupons from Swanson or whatever.
Yep. Another perfect example is anybody who carries an AARP card. When you present that card, if that particular merchant offers coupons, you will most likely be targeted for 1 or 2 or 3 coupons, courtesy of AARP. And I mean that in a good way. Another great observation.
So should we essentially pay for everything cash if we can?
That's actually a really good question. Actually, these days, the statistics show that fewer and fewer people are carrying cash. And more people, the debit card really is the method of payment that's most popular, followed by credit cards. Debit cards, they come out of your checking account right away. They're relatively safe, and you don't get a bill at the end of the month. It's just in your banking statement. But remember, in order to get a hotel room, in order to rent a car, and in order to book an airline flight, you must have a credit card. You have to have a credit card. There's so many things these days that require it. Another great question. Any other questions, concerns? How are we doing on time? I think we're doing very well.
So how safe is online banking?
Online banking generally is very safe. It is an encrypted transaction between your computer and the bank or whoever their service provider is. So it generally is safe to do that. It would take a lot of work for a hacker to break the encryption key that is new when you sign on to your computer banking. It generates a key, a unique key. And that key is only good for that session. And it would take a lot of work and probably about 400 computers working 40 years to break the key. So it's generally safe.
What do you think about those giving your computer over? If I've had computer trouble, I'll call the Geek Squad, and they'll say, okay, fine, I'll take control of your computer and me. What do you think of that?
I would be a little bit suspicious if I didn't know the people, personally know the people with whom I'm dealing.
All the ones I've dealt with are in India. When you call Dell, I guess.
That's a little bit scary. I don't think I would let anyone take over my computer who I did not know. Personally, have a personal relationship with, and for a long time. That's not an indictment of that service.
I've got some good computer people now that are.
Yeah.
I'll just take the box to it.
that are reliable and trustworthy. Right? If you ever suspect that someone's not trustworthy or they're not being forward with you and honest and true, run away. Run away. And that was one of the items in our 6 warning signs of danger. Are there any comments about tonight's presentation and any more questions? I know it's very brief. I did that intentionally because we also have some important events tonight to watch on TV. I did not want to have a long, glassy-eyed presentation for everybody. But if there are no further questions or comments, I'd like to thank everyone and thank Robin for her assistance and John Spinney as well. And our thanks to Norfolk Cable for carrying our presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.